Hello, and welcome back to the Science of Folate series. This week we are covering the bloodbugs, which are found in both folate 4 and in folate 76. So we're kind of based in the east coast of the United States for this one. So bloodbugs, as you can probably guess, are mutated giant mosquitoes or mosquitoes, as Cosworth says. I don't know why he says it that way, but he does. So mosquitoes are found pretty much across the world except in Antarctica. And not very common in Scotland, as far as I'm aware. I've certainly never experienced any mosquito bites in Scotland, where I have in Portugal and Majorca, but never here in Scotland. We have the midges, which are less dangerous but more irritating, and the midges do seem to love me. Um, Everybody complains about them, especially because most of the repellents that work for mosquitoes and the like don't seem to work on the midges. And they do seem to like me quite a lot. So if I venture out during the summer, I tend to get bitten quite badly. Um, but there's a lot of different species, and mosquitoes are kind of infamous because they are essentially the most deadly insect on the planet. And that's not because they're venomous or anything like that. It is because they transmit infectious diseases from host to host. So they have these long mouth parts, and the females are the ones that tend to feed on blood, which is partly either it's necessary for them to lay their eggs, or it helps them produce more eggs because they get more nutrition out of it, I guess. But what they do is that they bite and suck the blood of a host species, and then they maybe go and feed on another one, and there's a little bit of kind of backwash essentially, so they end up injecting some saliva into the next host, which could also be carrying sort of viruses, bacteria, or protozoa. So particularly notorious for transmitting malaria and yellow fever, West Nile virus are some of the more common ones, but there's quite a lot of mosquito-borne infections that can be transmitted. I'll put a link in the description to the Wikipedia page that gives you a more thorough list, but it's something to be aware of, especially if you travel to parts of the world where these infections are common, and anybody that lives in these areas would be quite well aware of the issues with mosquitoes, and they are responsible for the death of around 1 million people every year because of these diseases that get transmitted. They are most active in the kind of evening, in the morning, or at night time. So the term for that is crepuscular, or nocturnal for if they're active at night. But crepuscular means that they're more active kind of in the evening and in the early morning, and not so active during the middle of the night or during the daytime. Um, you tend to find mosquitoes quite a lot around areas where there is sort of more stagnant water, so ponds, marshes, and things, because that's where they lay their eggs. They do lay their eggs in the water, and the larvae um, do kind of live in the water. So it's quite a common place to find them in areas where there is a lot of this kind of standing water, marshes, swamps, that kind of thing. Um, but they are one of the most dangerous insects in the planet because of this ability to transmit infections. Ticks kind of come quite close behind mosquitoes in that regard, because they're prone to transmitting diseases as well. I say it's something that happens with many species that feed on blood from other species, that they can pass infections along, and they can transmit these diseases from one to the other. Zika virus is another one. There's so many. I think malaria is the one that pretty much everybody knows about. And unfortunately, in the fallout world, these things have become about 2 feet in length. I say if you've ever seen a mosquito, they are at best maybe like kind of half a centimetre long at the biggest. They're really not very big, but in fallout they are gigantic. Otherwise, they do seem to act fairly similarly to their real world counterparts. And sometimes you'll see them like this, so you can see their abdomens engorged with blood, because it's been feeding. And in the Fallout games, they can basically spit that blood at you, and it does carry radiation. Um, and if you're playing Fallout 4 in survival mode, then being bitten by a blood bug can increase your risk of disease, which is lovely. So that is kind of what we're based on. I think most people are familiar with mosquitoes. They are found in most of the kind of most of the world. That most places will have an issue with mosquitoes. We don't see them so much in Scotland. It's probably a bit too cold for them to survive, although with the way climate change is happening, that probably will change over time. But we do have the midges to contend with, which are a related species to the mosquitoes. They aren't so bad for transmitting diseases, but their bites can be extremely irritating, and certainly I tend to react quite a bit to them, and it becomes really, really quite itchy. And mosquitoes can also trigger allergies in some people, as can midges and many other kind of biting insects. So they are quite problematic, and there's a lot of time and money spent on trying to control mosquito populations, trying to keep them away. So having mosquito nets for bed if you're camping, especially, repellents, and so insect killers and things like that. They're even trying some kind of genetic manipulations and stuff to try and control the population. And the biggest reason for that is because of this disease transmission. So parasite-borne disease is a major issue in the world, and particularly in countries where where a lot of people are economically not in a good situation, so they maybe don't have access to all these preventative measures. So even just having access to mosquito nets or repellents and things, which means that there is a high incidence of these infections and these diseases, which make people very ill and can kill people as well. So the mosquitoes are notorious for being very, very much one of the biggest killers of humans across the world every year. So it is something that is quite important, and Fallout has gone and made them even more terrifying than they already are. So we'll head over to the Wasteland, just outside Concord, and we'll meet a couple of them. I say you do come across them pretty early in the game in Fallout 4. So we'll go and meet them and see what's going on, and we'll take it from there. So let's head over to the Commonwealth, and I'll meet you there. Later date. But again, so as soon as you start this game, you're encountering 3 of the kind of main insect species in this game. So these are the Bloodbugs. Oh, that noise. So you can see this one's been feeding. You can see its abdomen is full and red and throbbing. So these are mosquitoes, except they're like 2 feet tall or 2 feet long. Otherwise, they've got a lot in common with your standard mosquito. They drink blood, and they kind of store it in their abdomen there, and you can see it. Ugh, disgusting. So you do quite often find these guys around like corpses of something like a dead ramen or something like that. There's also quite a lot of them near Fort Hagen, where you go during the main plot. There's the Greater Mass Blood Bank right next to that, being a blood bank. So you find quite a population of these guys. So they're mosquitoes, so it's Anopheles species, and they bite and take your blood, and they, in this game, they will spit the blood at you, which is contaminated, inflicts radiation damage. And if you're playing Fallout 4 in survival mode, being bitten by a blood bug is one of the risks of you getting an illness in the game, which is pretty realistic, because in the real world, mosquitoes, as you probably know, are a major issue for public health and disease. So this is a phenomenon called vector-borne disease, where insects or parasites actually can transfer other infectious agents from one to another, both humans and animals. So ticks are quite notorious for doing that as well, and mosquitoes are thought to be responsible for more than 700,000 deaths in the world every single year, potentially up to 1 million. They carry many diseases, best known probably malaria, but yellow fever, West Nile virus, there's a huge list, because mosquitoes will often feed from more than one person at a time, and sometimes when they bite, they basically inject some of the blood potentially, so they can transmit viruses and bacteria and things that way, which is horrible. But mosquitoes are a big problem in terms of public health, because their ability to transmit diseases between different people, and also to a degree in animals as well. So it's quite realistic. That's one thing, the survival mode in this game just gets so many of these things right, and that's one that if you get bitten by an insect, if you get bitten by an animal, there's a risk of you getting an illness because of that. So they have included that. But these guys tend to be in groups. I say there's only 2 here because this is obviously the very beginning of the game, and it's not too harsh until it, throws a death claw at you. But but oftentimes there'll be at least kind of 4 or 5 of them around, and so they can kind of swarm, and they tend to attack in groups. They're quite difficult to hit because they're small, and because of the way they fly about. They're not always easy to hit without VATs, especially when they're aware of you and they're trying to attack you. They do have a habit of fleeing as well, so you'll sometimes see that if you kill one of these 2, the other one will often sort of fly off and then maybe come back and try again. They do employ kind of drive-by tactics, or fly-by tactics, I guess. That they'll come in and they'll attack, and then if things aren't going their way, they'll kind of take off and then come back again. But yeah, these are bugs. The buzzing is really annoying. Yeah, disgusting. But yeah, so bloodbugs are giant mosquitoes, is the bottom line, and that mosquitoes are a species that are endemic to most parts of the US as far as I'm aware. Not something that we really have quite so much of in the UK, certainly not in Scotland. I think it still just gets a bit too cold for them here, but they do often hang around water areas as well. They lay their eggs and things in the water. You've got to assume that the bloodbugs in this game do that as well. So yeah, horrible stuff. I'm not a fan of bugs. I can deal with wormy things and slimy things. I don't like things that fly, and I don't like things that jump. Just gives me the heebie-jeebies. Like snails and slugs and stuff are fine. I'm cool with spiders. I'm cool with scorpions. But these guys, absolutely not.